In January 1921, a strange ship appeared on the coast of North Carolina. It was not hidden far out in the ocean. It was right there, stuck in the shallow waters near Cape Hatteras, where people on shore could see it. From the coast, people could see her tall masts, her rigging, and her silent shape leaning against the shoals. The ship looked damaged, but not completely destroyed. That was what made the scene so strange from the beginning. The vessel was called the Carroll A. Deering. She was a 5-masted schooner, built to carry cargo across long ocean routes. She was not a small fishing boat, and she was not an unknown vessel. She was a working ship. But when officials finally reached her, after she ran aground, they found a mystery that would last for more than a century. The ship was still there. The cargo vessel had not vanished, but the people on board were gone. There was no captain, no crew, and no clear answer. Just an abandoned ship on one of the most dangerous coasts in America. The question was simple but difficult. What happened before the Deering reached the Shoals? To understand why the Deering became famous, we have to go back before the wreck, before the empty deck, and before the rumors began. The Carroll A. Deering was launched in Maine in 1919, during the final years of the great age of sailing cargo ships. Steamships were already changing ocean trade, but schooners still had a useful place. They were cheaper to run, they did not need coal for power, and they could still carry heavy cargo across long routes when the wind was right. The Deering was owned by the G.G. Deering Company and named after the owner's son. She was large, modern for her type, and built for serious commercial work. This was not a pleasure boat or a small coastal craft. By 1920, she was sailing between American ports and South America. Her final voyage began like many others, with cargo, orders, routine paperwork, and men expecting to finish the job and return home. Nothing about the start suggested a mystery. Her captain was William B. Wormell, an experienced mariner from Maine. He was older, respected, and familiar with ships like the Deering. To people who knew the sea, he was not the kind of man who would easily lose control of a vessel. But not every part of the voyage was smooth. According to later accounts, tension may have existed between Captain Wormell and his first mate, Charles McClellan. That detail would later become important, even though it did not prove anything by itself. We do not know how serious that tension really was. Ships were hard places to work. Men lived close together, worked long hours, and faced bad weather. Arguments happened, and a dispute at sea did not automatically mean disaster. But after the ship disappeared from normal contact, every small detail became important. Ordinary problems started to look more serious. Every remembered comment, every complaint, and every strange moment became part of the story people tried to rebuild. The Deering sailed to Rio de Janeiro with a cargo of coal. After unloading, she began the long trip back north toward the United States. The route took her from warmer waters back toward the winter Atlantic and the American coast. On the return journey, the ship stopped in Barbados. There, Captain Wormell reportedly spoke with other captains and seemed concerned about his crew, especially the behavior of his first mate. This report later gave investigators something to examine. This does not prove mutiny or violence. A captain could complain about a crew without facing anything more serious than poor discipline. But after the ship was found empty, this small report became one of the details people returned to again and again. After leaving Barbados, the Deering headed north. The plan was simple: return to the American coast and continue the normal business of shipping. There was no known emergency, no final distress call, and no clear warning that the voyage was about to end strangely. For a while, the voyage seemed to continue. The ship moved up the Atlantic, passing through winter weather, busy sea routes, and dangerous waters near the American coast. Somewhere during this final stretch, the normal voyage became something else. Then came one of the strangest sightings in the whole story. On January 29, 1921, the Deering passed near the Cape Lookout lightship, close enough for a shouted message to be heard by the men on the lightship. A man aboard the schooner shouted that the ship had lost its anchors. That message was strange because anchors were important for safety near the coast, but the way the message was delivered made it even stranger to the witnesses. Witnesses later said the man who shouted did not seem to be the captain. Some accounts described him as having a foreign accent, and the crew appeared to be moving around in an unusual way. These details were never enough to solve the case. Again, none of this proves what happened. Witnesses can misunderstand things, especially at sea, in bad light and at a distance. But this became one of the last living glimpses of the Carroll A. Deering before the mystery fully began. 2 days later, the ship was found hard aground on Diamond Shoals, near Cape Hatteras. This was a dangerous place for any vessel. Sailors and coastal rescuers already knew the area as a place where ships could be lost quickly. The waters around Cape Hatteras were sometimes called the graveyard of the Atlantic because so many ships had wrecked there over the years. Sandbars shifted, storms moved in fast, and strong currents made rescue difficult. The Deering had reached one of the worst possible places. At first, bad weather made it difficult to reach the schooner. The ocean around her was still dangerous, and the ship sat helpless in the surf while people watched from a distance. That delay meant investigators could not inspect her immediately, but once officials and rescuers finally boarded the vessel, the story became even stranger. They were not simply looking at a damaged ship, they were looking at an empty one, with signs that the people had left before help arrived. The crew was gone. The captain was gone. The ship's lifeboats were missing. Whatever had happened, the people had left the vessel before investigators reached it, but no one knew whether they left by choice, by fear, or because they were forced. Navigation equipment was missing too. The ship's log and important papers were not where they should have been. That made the disappearance harder to reconstruct, because the best record of the final days was no longer available. Food appeared to have been prepared. Personal items were left behind. The ship looked abandoned but not completely destroyed. These details made the case more confusing because they suggested the crew left quickly, but not during a normal planned departure. It did not look like a normal wreck where everyone had clearly died in the impact. The ship had hit the shoals, but the missing lifeboats suggested that people may have left before the vessel became a total wreck. That raised the hardest question in the whole case. Why would the crew leave the ship, and where did they go after leaving it? If they reached another vessel or shore, someone should have heard from them. But no clear answer came. The first explanation was simple. Perhaps the crew abandoned ship because they feared the Deering would break apart on the shoals. In that moment, leaving may have seemed safer than staying on a vessel trapped in rough water. But if they launched lifeboats in dangerous water, survival would have been uncertain. The currents, cold and surf near Cape Hatteras, could turn an escape attempt into another disaster. A lifeboat was not a guarantee of safety. No confirmed trace of the captain or crew was ever found. That absence allowed other theories to grow. When evidence is missing, people try to fill the gaps, and the Deering gave investigators many gaps to work with. Another theory was mutiny. The reported tension between captain and crew made this idea tempting to investigators, especially once newspapers began following the story. A ship found empty, with a missing captain and missing papers, made the idea easy to discuss. Maybe the crew took control, maybe they removed the captain, maybe they escaped in the lifeboats. It was dramatic, and it gave the story a clear villain. But drama is not the same as proof, and proof was exactly what the case lacked. If there was mutiny, where did the men go afterward? Why did no one clearly appear later with the truth, the money, or even a strong rumour that could close the case? A mutiny theory explains tension, but not the silence afterward. Piracy was also suggested. The early 1920s were full of fear, rumours and stories about crime at sea, especially after the chaos of the First World War. For some people, piracy seemed like a possible answer. But the Deering was not stripped like a ship robbed for profit. The evidence did not clearly point to pirates, even if the idea made a strong headline. A good mystery can attract dramatic theories, but not all of them fit the facts. Some people connected the mystery to rum-running, because prohibition had recently begun in the United States. Others imagined political plots, foreign agents, or secret attacks. These ideas reflected the fears of the time as much as the evidence. This was a nervous period in American history. Newspapers often made mysteries larger, and readers wanted answers. But the more dramatic the theory became, the weaker the evidence often looked. The Deering case had many stories but few solid facts. The simplest answer may be that the Deering lost control near the coast. The crew abandoned her and the sea took them before anyone could help. It is not the most exciting theory, but it may be the most realistic. That answer is possible, but it is also frustrating. It explains the disappearance without giving the missing men a clear final moment. We do not know who ordered the lifeboats lowered, what they feared, or what happened after they left. The ocean often removes evidence before anyone can study it. In the Deering case, the water, weather, and delay all worked against investigators. By the time people could inspect the ship, the most important answers may already have been gone. Eventually, the Carroll A. Deering was broken apart by the sea and by salvage work. What remained was the story, a large schooner found in plain sight, with no captain, no crew, and no answer that's ever stuck. Just a ship, just a mystery, just the sea.